Mapping Phragmites in the Great Marsh is important for several reasons. First, for understanding the extent of the Phragmites problem within the marsh. How many acres of Phragmites are out there, and how robust is that stand or those stands of Phragmites? Second, it's important for monitoring the effectiveness of the previous year's treatments. We've been treating Phragmites for several years now, and every year we go out and monitor how much of the Phragmites has been killed, how much has regrown, and how robust it is. And third, for providing the contractor with an accurate amount of acreages and locations for calculating his costs for treating Phragmites in the coming year. Access out into the marsh is oftentimes extremely difficult. First of all, you need to get out there by boat in most cases. Second, you have to navigate creeks and ditches to get to particular stands. And third, you have tides that either low or high get in the way. Oftentimes, the high tides will flood the marsh, inhibiting your access to a particular stand for measuring. What we collect when we're out there is, in addition to circumnavigating the entire stand, we also collect ambient surrounding vegetation, and for the purposes of identifying how robust the stand is, we will also measure the height of the tallest stems, the stand density, and the stand maturity, which is measured in whether seed heads are present or absent. As I mentioned, we walk around the entire stem. We mark it with some fluorescent spray paint, indicating that that stand has been measured and that we won't go back to it if we encounter it again. Once a stand has been entered into the GPS unit, we'll then bring the information back to the office and put it all on an orthophoto map. That way we can check any stands that we did not fully get around, either because of impediments such as creeks or the stand was too dense or something that wouldn't allow us to completely map the stand, and we'll identify what that particular impediment was. We'll finish mapping the stand in the office, and that we also can compare it to the previous year's Phragmites stands that were mapped, so we can see what we're working with and how much change has been affected. One of the things we also do when we're out in the marsh is we look at old stands of Phragmites that have been treated. We will often see where they were based on the dead standing stems. We'll look at what plants are coming back. Oftentimes we're getting native vegetation that returns in amongst the standing dead stems. What we find growing is, usually if the stand has just recently been treated, we'll find some of the pioneer species such as Salicornia, and patents will beginning to grow. Disticulus, Juncus, cinquefoil, and some other native vegetation will quickly come in. So we have been mapping Phragmites in the Great Marsh for several years now, and we've seen quite a bit of Phragmites that has been killed off, and in its place we've seen a lot of native vegetation come back. The salinities are quite low, and that's why Phragmites is getting a foothold in the marsh. We've been diligent to make sure that in the short term we can keep the Phragmites at bay, which is happening, and we're pleasantly surprised to see that native vegetation is taking over and keeping the Phragmites out.